up, guys? So I'm currently into like day 4 of self-isolation, and I have been watching everything on Netflix and Amazon Prime. But it's good news for you because it means I can give you more content, and today I'm going to tell you about the new Netflix miniseries which I just binged. It's called Self-Made, inspired by the life of Madam C.J. Walker, and it tells the story of America's first female African-American self-made millionaire. That's pretty neat. With Octavia Spencer stepping into her shoes, the series chronicles the life of Sarah Breedlove, the washerwoman, and her metamorphosis into Madam C.J. Walker, the brand and entrepreneur. There's 4 episodes in total. The first 2 episodes are directed by Kassi Lemmons, who recently directed the Harriet Tubman biopic, Harriet, and the latter 2 episodes are directed by one called Demane Davis, and I've honestly never seen any of her work before. This is the first time I've seen her direct anything, so yay. The series begins in 1908 in St. Louis, where we're introduced to Sarah Breedlove, the washerwoman, but she also gives us a bit of a life story, and she was dealt a rough hand. She was orphaned, she was widowed, pregnant at like 15, and she has a daughter, who's all grown up now. She's called Lilia, she's played by Tiffany Haddish, and she's had a second husband who's very abusive and basically left her, and all the stress of that caused her hair to fall out. And one day, this businesswoman called Addie Monroe, who's played by Carmen Ejogo, knocks on her door and says she has this hair growth product that she should try. She gives it a whirl, and a few months later, she has a new head of hair and a newfound confidence. And because of this, Sarah wants to go into business with Addie, selling the hair growth product because she believes in the product and she wants to help other women feel beautiful. So when she asks Addie to be a salesperson, Addie refuses because apparently she doesn't look the part. But of course, Sarah doesn't really take no for an answer, so what she does instead is she decides to make her own hair growth product, and then this sparks a rivalry between Addie and Sarah, as in their business rivals, and eventually Sarah gets her own salon, which leads to her own factory, which leads to a national franchise of salons across America under the brand name of the Walker Hair Company. I'll be honest, I didn't have any prior knowledge of who Madam C.J. Walker was before I saw this miniseries, but when I watched the show, I was like, why has this woman's story not been told before? It's absolutely fascinating. She had such an incredible life, and her rise to such notoriety is a really interesting story, and yet it hasn't been made until just now. And then I realized with Kassi Lemmons directing the 2 episodes, she's the person who directed the Harriet Tubman movie, which we only just saw last year. And again, that's another really inspiring African-American female story which took far too long to get made. So yeah, I'm really happy that this inspiring woman's story is finally being told. I had my fair share of problems with Kassi Lemmons' Harriet. I'll put a link to that review up there if you want to check that out. But Self-Made, I thought was pretty good. I binged it all in the space of a day, which really says a lot. I mean, it's about the first female self-made millionaire who was also African-American. That's a really rich story that's never been tapped before, so I was very invested in it. Octavia Spencer is great here as Madam C.J. Walker. She brings so much warmth to the character, and her tenacity is inspiring. She gets plenty of great scenes to flex her acting muscles, but my favorite moment of her was at the end of the 2nd episode when she storms the stage at this business convention in front of this room full of men asking for their endorsement for her business, and she's so inspiring in this scene, and the scene is full of emotion, and it's very empowering for women, and it actually made me go, "You go, girl," while watching that scene. That's how moved I was watching her. There's also great work from Carmen Ejogo, who plays Sarah's rival Addie. They took a bit of time to really flesh her out, but there's one scene that they give her where she's talking to her mother on the phone, which adds a lot of dimensions to her characters, which I did appreciate. There's also a really good performance from Tiffany Haddish, who plays Sarah's daughter, Lilia. She brings so much life to the character. My only problem with her as the character was they introduced several romantic interests for her. There's her first husband, John, and then there's this other interest called Peaches, who's assumed to be a sort of lesbian lover at some point, but it's never really fully confirmed. It doesn't go very deep with it. It's all sort of suggested, and I would have preferred a little bit more there. It would have just given a bit more depth to the character as a whole. There's also terrific performances from the men in this series as well, particularly from Blair Underwood, Garrett Morris, and Kevin Carroll. The show itself, like the aesthetic of the show, the costume design, and the production design, all looks fantastic. The story itself was very engaging, mostly because Sarah's life was so interesting, and she was kind of a pioneer for African-American women. However, it is a little over-embellished in its stylistic flair. At times, the show dips its toe in the fantasy, and I wasn't quite sold on this. There's a few moments in the series where Sarah imagines being backed up by a bunch of chorus dancers, like when she's giving a little tour of her potential factory to a bunch of investors, and there's another bit where she's outside the business convention and there's all these male dancers lighting up the pavement for her and it turns this shade of neon purple. I was just like, why? I didn't get what this was supposed to symbolize. It felt a little bit out of place. Same with the boxing metaphor that's in the first episode, which is called the fight of the century. Like, there's several times in the episode where it cuts to Sarah and Addie in a boxing ring, a literal boxing ring, getting ready to fight each other because they're business rivals. And it's just a little bit too heavy on the metaphor. Like, I just don't think it was needed. Just a little bit on the nose. As for other problems with the series, it does have a few moments where there's some heavy exposition dumps. Some of the dialogue was quite cheesy. Some of the culprits include, like, you can run, but you can't hide, and it's everything I ever dreamed it would be. Oh god, cringe. Just makes it feel like a really corny TV movie. And I wasn't really satisfied with the conclusion of Addie's character. I just didn't really feel like we got closure with her, because Sarah admits to Addie in the end that she did in fact steal her formula for the hair growth and made millions off of it. But their final scene together just sort of fizzles out. It's into nothing. It's just this Sarah is instantly forgiven by Addie because Sarah says to her, oh, there's more important things for us in the world to be worried about right now rather than petty rivalry between two businesses. And that's easy enough to say when you're the one who's made millions off someone else's idea. So when she's instantly forgiven by Addie, it just feels like, oh, she needs to be forgiven because Sarah is, the protagonist and the one we're supposed to be rooting for in this. So it doesn't feel like the conclusion of the character has been earned. It just feels like, oh, this needs to happen because we need a happy ending. During the end credits, we're giving these little title cards with what happened to all the people from the story, and there just isn't any information on what happened to Addie, and I was really interested in the character of Addie, and we didn't get any conclusion to her. We didn't know where she ended up, what happened to her. She just kind of gets forgotten about, and that's frustrating, especially when the show has spent so much time and focus on the rivalry between the two women. I just wanted some closure on her, that's all. In the end, guys, I would say I had a nice time watching Self-Made. I love Octavia Spencer, and she is reliable as ever here. The supporting cast are fab, but the series as a whole has a few script problems. I was really enjoying Sarah's story, but I honestly think, though, if the series had 1 or 2 more episodes, it could have been fleshed out a little bit more, and the dramatic moments of the episodes could have been built to and had a little bit more impact. But the story was very interesting. I felt very inspired watching it, but because it's a lot of life events crammed into 4 episodes, it does feel a little bit choppy, and if we had even 1 or 2 more hours to spend a little bit more time in Sarah's world and build towards the big moments in her life, then I feel like the series could have benefited from that. So it's time to ask the 3 questions. Firstly, would I watch this TV series again? I enjoyed watching it, but I don't think it has a lot of rewatchability. This isn't a show I'd feel the need to sit down and watch again, but I'm glad I have seen it. It's a very disposable but interesting series. Question number 2, am I going to recommend it for you guys? Yeah, if you guys are looking for something light and uplifting, then this is a series that isn't going to take up too much of your time, and you'll learn a lot about an inspiring woman. It's got a unifying message about feeling beautiful in your own skin, and also it's an empowering story of a woman finding her voice, so yeah, I can definitely recommend this one. And question number 3, what score am I going to give it out of 10? It does a good job of telling Madam C.J. Walker's story, and Octavia Spencer fans are going to love watching her sink her teeth into the role. However, the series itself does have the aura of a made-for-TV movie. It's very cheesy, bit heavy on the metaphor in places, and some of the creative choices weren't all that necessary or even that inspired. So I'm gonna give Self-Made a score of 5 out of 10. There we go, guys. That was my review of Self-Made. But as always, this is just one bloke's opinion. I want to hear from you guys. Have you guys watched Self-Made? Have you binged it on Netflix? If you have, what did you think of it? Did you love Octavia Spencer? Whatever you thought of this series, please let your voices be heard in the comment section down below. I want to hear from you because I need a bit of conversation with people through this quarantine. So yeah, you're my human interaction at the moment. So whatever you think, sure, let your voice be heard in that comment section down below. If you guys want to follow me on any social media, Twitter, Instagram, also in the video description down below. If you haven't done so already, don't forget to click subscribe. Lots of content coming to you over the quarantine, so yeah, hit subscribe if you don't want to miss it. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. For more things related to movies, TV, and popcorn culture, I'm Luke Carefield, and I'll see you next time.